Welcome, everyone. I'm David Paparelli, the co-founder of M-Cultivo, and this is The Cupping Table. Over the next few weeks, we will be hearing from some of the best coffee producers in the world. They'll be sharing their stories, insights, and outlook on specialty coffee and what makes their coffee so unique. My guest today is Bernard Uhe. I was introduced to Bernie because of his interest in running a competition and auction to elevate Ecuadorian coffee, which will be known as the best of Ecuador. From our initial conversation, Bernie was clearly passionate about Ecuadorian coffee, and today we will find out why it is so extraordinary. Welcome, Bernie. Where are you joining it from us today?
I'm here in Ecuador, specifically Vilcabamba, Loja, Ecuador.
Amazing. And what are you guys nearing harvest season? What point are you at?
Well, actually, no. The harvest will probably start in late April and then go through actually November on the Noria farm, which is at a higher elevation.
So you have a rare moment for us today. Some time on rest, hopefully, in repairing your farm, but also for podcasting.
Actually, that's true. Our kind of downtime, well, we don't really have any downtime, but the freer time that we have is generally January through April. And then April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, we're busy with the coffee, with the harvesting and processing, getting it ready for sales. And we actually start the sales, the exportation in September, sometimes August.
Amazing. Well, yeah. So for our audience sake, I mean, we've had a few conversations, but for our audience, I'd love if you would tell me a little bit about your background, just how you got into specialty coffee in Ecuador.
Actually, the way I got to Ecuador was a friend of mine and I were having dinner in the Santa Monica Promenade, Santa Monica, California. And we were both single. And the waitress that was waiting on us was from Ecuador, and she was very pretty. So we had decided to take a trip to South America and Ecuador. And that's how I fell in love with Ecuador. Fell in love with the people and the country. The country is extraordinarily beautiful. And that's kind of how it started. We first got into cacao, but cacao is lower elevation. And one of the persons, Tim Leahy, the owner of the property, the Noria farm, who we worked together with, he was interested in cacao, along with some other people, my mother and myself. And so we started growing cacao, but then it changed from cacao. We had an opportunity to get into some coffee. So we started to look around for some coffee. We had a real estate company. And along with the real estate company, that allowed us to look for really good properties. And we got very, very lucky and got some really good coffee properties. Good water, good location, good soil.
Yeah, what was it that, I mean, you said cacao's lower elevation, but what was it about the difference between cacao and coffee that really made you select coffee over cacao?
Basically, demand and the ease of exporting. With the cacao, you need to export the cacao. You kind of need to send a container. People aren't going to buy the cacao and ship it FedEx air freight. So, and a container, you need at least 5,000, at least 5 ton, really, to send a container of cacao. And the cacao that we have is, it's what's called cacao nacional. And most of the cacao grows on the trunk of the tree. It's like, it's the really, really good cacao. We got very, very lucky on on basically all the farms that we have, the cacao farms and the coffee farms. And so, as far as quality goes, but not as far as quantity goes. Our quantity is good on the coffee, but we don't grow quantity varieties. We grow quality varieties. And the same thing happened with the cacao. We are in the coastal jungle growing the cacao. And we have monkeys in the trees and a lot of snakes. It's a little dangerous for some of the workers. These guys are tough. There's no doubt about it. But the cacao is the super high quality, but it's much different, and it's more, it's not as exportable, and it's not as financially lucrative, I should say, as I shouldn't say lucrative, because it's dependent on the quantity and the quality. But the cacao is much more difficult to work with as far as exporting to the international community than the coffee is.
Yeah, and so you're currently working in cacao and coffee still, right? You're doing both?
Well, we have a coffee shop actually in Vilcabamba, Ecuador. Vilcabamba is known as the Valley of Longevity. They've done studies here, and a lot of the people here live to be 100 or over 100, at least in the past, maybe not so much now. But we opened a coffee shop, and one of the owner of the El Dorado farm named our coffee shop for us, and it's called the Beverly Hills Cafe here in Vilcabamba, Ecuador. And so with chocolate, the cacao, we make chocolate, and we sell it in the coffee shop. And most people that have eaten the chocolate say it's the best they ever had.
Amazing. I'd love to try some. So I guess for the benefit of everybody, maybe an overview of your operation. And, you've got a couple farms, you've got a coffee shop. What else do you have going on?
Well, we have the other person that we work with, Tim is Leahy. He has bought some property on the coast, and we grow cacao there. And we also personally have a couple of small farms there on the coast where we grow the same cacao. They're right next to Tim's farms. And then we have, we manage it for Tim. Tim has a big farm along the Peruvian border where we grow coconuts, and they're like 7, 8 years old, but we have about 600 coconut trees. And we also, with John and Tim, with the elder family and Tim Leahy, we have what's called neem. And we have probably 16,000 neem trees in total. And what neem is in India, neem is considered to be the sacred plant. People use it for health reasons. And we use it because it's probably the best organic pesticide there is. And it also helps the plants with their immune systems. And so we spray it on the plants after they've flowered. We don't spray it on the plants when they've flowered. So we have, along the Peruvian border, we have 3 farms, and we grow neem, coconuts. And then along in one of the other provinces named Manabí on the coast, inland from the coast a little ways, from Canoa and Hama. Most people would know of Canoa. Canoa is fairly famous. And we grow the cacao.
And then from the coffee standpoint, you have La Noria, El Dorado, and Elisa, correct?
Yeah. So in Manabí, we have the cacao. And then in Loja, on the lower elevations, we have the neem and the coconuts. And then in the higher elevation, in Loja, we have the coffee farms. And we have La Noria, which is our award-winning farm. We have El Dorado, which is also an award-winning farm. in coffee. And then we have another farm called Elisa, where we think Elisa is going to put out some really, really good coffee because of the conditions.
And Elisa's
And so
new.
Elisa is new, yeah.
Okay.
And then we have a small farm in a place called Sacapo, which is right next to Vilcabamba. It's about 10 minutes from where I live.
Okay. And with El Dorado and the Noria and hopefully Elisa in the near future, what makes these award-winning farms? How do you get there? I mean, because when you started these, obviously you want it to be great coffee, but I don't know if you had it in your vision or your imagination that they would be award-winning. So I'd love to hear more about what made you capable of producing award-winning coffee.
We were lucky to get good seeds for one, and then we were actually we did our due diligence looking for somebody that had the seeds, and the person that had the seeds grew our first plants for us, and because of the real estate company, we were able to look for good properties and legitimately, professionally. And we found really, really good properties, good water, good sun exposure, good shade for the trees, and good soil for the most part. And then what we do is we spray the neem, and we use what's called worm tea. We have worm beds where we make worm tea, and that's probably the best organic fertilizer you can use. And we spray that on the plants. And all those things combined with the sun here in Ecuador, you get 12 hours of sun every single day. We're just very, very lucky. I mean, I don't know how many clicks away from we're maybe 500 clicks away from the equator. And we just are able to grow really good coffee at the elevations because we're so close to the equator. And all those conditions combined, yeah.
And so your seed due diligence, that's kind of, did you start with the property or you start with the seed due diligence? And kind of how do you make a decision on these seem really important decisions going into it because it's the foundation of the entire operation, right?
Well, to be honest, you got to have some luck. And we just, with due diligence and a little bit of luck, it all came together. We just ended up, we had our issues. Originally, we got some seeds that were not so good. And then we had to start looking around a little bit more. And then we ended up with good seeds. We ended up buying seeds from a guy that we contracted with a guy that was willing to go into Colombia and use his contacts. We paid him well to use his contacts to find good seeds for us. And then they just grew really well on the farm. But basically, if you start off with good seeds in the beginning and they do well on the farm, you don't go buy you don't buy seeds again. You use the seeds from the plants on the farm because they've acclimated to the area. So we started off with good seeds, and then we had good conditions on the farms. So we were able to harvest good seeds for replanting. And right now, altogether, the Noria farm has about 90,000 plants in total. Wow. The El Dorado farm has maybe 130, and then the Elisa farm has 140. They're not all mature plants, but the Elisa farm, has about 40,000. Yeah. So 90, 130, and 40.
With all of this, you are spending years trying to get these farms into production, right? So you're learning effectively a lesson or two a year when you're starting out. Is that right? And then building on that experience. But this isn't a project that you came into and it was an operating coffee farm and you started from there. I mean, you started.
No, we built it from ground up. I mean, it's definitely ground up, and everything we do is in the chocolate. It's bean to bar, and I mean, it's like the seed tree bean to bar. On the cacao, there were we bought farms that had some really old cacao trees, up to 60, 80 years old. And then the coffee was, from the seed to cupping it. So it was all built ground up. But
How'd you learn how to do all this?
I basically, it's my family, my wife's family, the Guevara family from Colombia. We all like to say that Orlando Guevara, that's our grower, and he's my brother-in-law. We like to say, and he's the one that knew most about the coffee. The whole family knows about the coffee, and it's a big family. But we always like to say Orlando was born under a coffee tree or a coffee bush. And he really knows coffee. And along with the Ecuadorians in the areas of the farms, we've been able to put out a good crop. We couldn't do it without the Ecuadorians. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they get a lot of the credit for sure. And then I've just always had good management abilities. I've always been able to see the whole picture ahead of time. I was a building contractor in California, and I could pretty much see I could get a set of plans and almost picture the job in my head and start to work at it from there. So I was able to do the same thing on the farms.
Yeah, but I mean, as a building contractor, you sort of came up. I'm assuming you came up in the industry a little bit, right? At examples, you had this with coffee and cacao. You kind of jumped in. It sounds like you jumped in head first, but you were kind of managing projects from around that, around those farms, and trying to get those farms up to speed. What's the difference between those two experiences? I mean, do you look back and sometimes wish you kind of came up in coffee a little bit more? Or were you happy to kind of take more of a top-down approach and kind of manage projects through?
The way I approach a project, within one project is a million small projects. And you just kind of get the big picture and you start completing one after the other, and you try to go in the right order. What I always tell people that work for me, on construction projects, we're doing all the infrastructure on the farms. We're building the farms out so we can process the coffee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I always tell them, if you know the order of events to complete the project, you can get out of order. But if you don't know the order to the events, you need to stay in order. So it's I know I get the picture of the order of events pretty easily. And so I was able to do the same thing I did in construction, breaking it down into smaller projects. I did the same thing on the farms and just took it from there.
And go ahead.
Yeah, we've been under the gun as far as like planting, and then all of a sudden the weather, we start to come into the summer, we don't have irrigation in yet. So we've had to like really work on it fast. I mean, we haven't been 100% efficient all the time, but we've been able to keep all the plants alive and irrigate them, and then the weather helps. I mean, the last year we went through a drought that we hadn't experienced before. The creeks were really low where we irrigate from into the reservoirs, and we have a lake on one farm, and it got really low, but now we're well into the rain again. So we did okay.
Yeah, and you've been doing this for some years. I would be curious on as you're building these operations up, some of the issues and challenges you faced, um, you know, what were the big standouts for things you had to overcome that kind of project management skill set couldn't anticipate?
Uh, I don't know. I I don't, to be honest with you, I've never been afraid to take on any project. So I just go for it. I mean, it, probably. I mean, there's been times I've been overwhelmed. I can handle a lot, but there's been times, just the accumulation of too many things to do in any one given point in time, that gets overwhelming. But as far as any of the projects, and we're doing some pretty big projects on the farm. I mean, right now we're building a 3-story building for processing and living quarters and drying on the roof in shade. And it's 20 meters by 36 meters, 3 stories. And yeah, no real challenges. You just go for it and take it a step at a time and try to complete each step. They do
Yeah,
the
and I
same
mean, I
thing on the
guess you did
farm.
some natural drought. You're dealing with some weather conditions, but it's things that you just sort of move forward. It sounds like you just it's another thing to take on, right? You adapt to the conditions.
What last year the drought was, some say it was the worst drought in Ecuadorian history or the last 50 years. So the creeks on the Noria farm, we have 2 creeks. They got really low, but we were still able to irrigate. If
Yeah.
anything, stressing out the coffee plants really creates a better fruit. Uh, they put more energy into the fruit, and you can get a better coffee from stressing it out. And then on the Elisa farm and El Dorado farm, which share a big reservoir, a big lake, we have like 4 reservoirs that we put in that are plastic lined. But there's also a big lake, pretty good sized lake. It's big for up in the Andes, high in the
So
Andes.
so during
Got
that
really
during
low.
during that during that drought and the stress on those coffee plants, they were producing high quality coffee, some of the best you've ever done, even during those conditions.
Well, it was after the harvest. So you harvest and
Yeah.
then you really the wet season, the rains is what a, after the rains start normally in October. But for some reason this year there was no rain in October, November. It started in towards the end of December. So that was really the drought period. But now we're getting a lot of rain. So you get rains in December, January, February, March, and then you start to harvest end of April, May, June, July, August. So you're really in the dry season when you're harvesting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So
the
let's change gears a bit and let's talk about Ecuador. So you're sitting at a meal with your friend and you see an attractive Ecuadorian waitress and you decide you're going to take a trip to Ecuador. Big difference going on vacation Ecuador and investing is as heavily as you have in Ecuador. What made you want to invest in Ecuador? What made it such a special place for you?
well, I fell in love with the country for one and the people, and then I met my wife, and she's Colombian, and she had broken up with her boyfriend, was vacationing in Ecuador. We met, and we actually lived on the coast first, and then some we became friends with some people down there, Armando, Maxima, Kevin, Diane. They had a restaurant called the Cafe Baina. And Kevin had already been in Ecuador. He was a biologist. He died, unfortunately. But he was a biologist, and he really schooled me a lot on Ecuador. And he told me that he loved a place called Vilcabamba. So we were going to build a hotel in in on the coast in Puerto Lopez. That was the area in Manabí. And Manabí is where we have the cacao, by the way. And so anyways, we vacationed to Vilcabamba, fell in love with Vilcabamba and bought a property in Vilcabamba. And the property was basically, I got into Buddhist meditation over 30 years ago, and we built a meditation center where we do meditation and sweat lodges, Native American sweat lodges, as traditionally as possible. I tried to do them the way I was taught. I don't go out of order because they knew better than me. So anyways, we bought the place for meditation and sweat lodges. And then we needed to make some money to build the place. So we got into real estate. We started a real estate company. And then little by little, we got it more into the cacao and then more into the coffee. And we met people through the real estate company that wanted to invest into agriculture in Ecuador or had an interest in agriculture. I thought, just looking at Ecuador, that Ecuador could grow. I mean, they already were growing probably the best cacao in the world. And the coffee was good. But I just thought, looking at the conditions, that Ecuador was prime for agriculture. So just with 12 hours of sunlight a day and good water and good soil, I just thought agriculture in Ecuador was the way to go.
Yeah, and so was it sort of, did you approach it from kind of an opportunistic standpoint of, hey, Ecuador is going to grow great coffee. It's already growing great cacao. We need to start in on this because we need to make some money. Was it more out of necessity, in other words, or was it the real estate and the hotel building seemed like they were part of your history, your past? This coffee and this agricultural, was it just you saw how well agricultural was doing, or you thought it would do, and then you started from there?
Well, the real estate company opened the door into the agriculture. Some of our clients were interested in agriculture. For example, Tim Leahy was interested in agriculture. The Elder family, they were interested in agriculture. And they actually came a little bit later. We first got into the cacao, and then later we were going to do the almonds. So we really looked into the almonds, and then the almonds weren't going to work. So then we decided to go with the coffee. But yeah, we needed to make money. I didn't want to go back. I was going back to the U.S. and working and sending money down and building the meditation center in Vilcabamba.
So you were back and forth.
I was back and forth from 2001 to like 2010. Wow. We bought our property in Vilcabamba, where we built the meditation center, in 2006. And then in 2010, I came down with my father. He was sick, but he loved Ecuador. For the time that he lived, he was in love with Ecuador. And then since 2010, I haven't been back. And then we got into the coffee, and we got into the cacao really in like 2013, and then the coffee like 2017. But we had been we did coconuts and other stuff like that originally.
And your experience on the agricultural side, it sounds like you had some great opportunities to partner with people and put your sweat equity in and manage these operations and learn a lot. Is that kind of how you cut your teeth starting in agriculture?
What do you mean? You lost me.
Yeah. So a lot of producers, they go buy farms, right? They put their own money in. They do this. What you said before, you've got you were managing these operations on behalf of these other interested people through your real estate company. Is that how these sort of deals came together?
Well, it definitely came together with the real estate company, finding the properties. And then we started an agricultural company. We actually started 5 companies. here in Ecuador. We had the real estate company first because it was a real estate construction company. And people who were buying real estate for agriculture wanted to build some houses on the property. So we built some houses and did some infrastructure. And then they wanted to do agriculture. And so we got into the agriculture, but we started an agricultural company. And then we thought we may need to import stuff. So we started an import-export company because we wanted to export the product and import machinery and things like that. And then we also started an escrow company. But escrow is not, using notaries here, escrow is probably not going to make it in Ecuador for at least another 10, 20 years. They won't use escrow. But that's really how it got going. And now that we are just going to be emphasizing on the agriculture and mostly the coffee. It's going to be the coffee that we're going to emphasize on, and the neem, because the neem is important for the coffee as the organic pesticide and the immune system building in the plant. We're liquidating the other companies and just holding on to the agricultural company because we don't need the other companies anymore. And the infrastructure will probably be built out by the end of next year.
So you
on the farms.
I mean, this is a winding road, right? From hotel building to, Buddhist meditation to real estate to opportunities in agriculture. And now you found your way into agriculture, specifically coffee, a component of that. And you're cutting ties with all the other companies that you started to get you there, and you're all in on agriculture at this point.
Right. Well, it's the opening and closing of doors as you're living one's life. As one lives one's life, certain doors open and certain doors close. And so you got to go with what's been given to you. And right now, the coffee is, we're ecstatic. We never imagined we would do this well in coffee, especially this fast. So we have to go with that. And what we need to do is keep upping our game. When did you realize that you had an amazing coffee, this award-winning cup of coffee? Because you must have known that there was something different or unique about this before you entered competitions, or you said it. When did you know that this was really something special? The guy that we bought the seeds from, he told us that they were really good seeds and we could have really good coffee. So we started, once we could have it cupped, we had it cupped. And then the people that cupped it for us here in Ecuador said it was good. So we thought we would enter Taza Dorado. We entered Taza Dorado in Cup of Excellence, and we did really well with the El Dorado farm and especially the Noria farm. We won Cup of Excellence one year. We won second place, third place, first place, and then with the El Dorado farm, we were 8th and 7th and 3rd and 4th.
What did you think when you tasted the coffee? Before you did all these, before you did Taza Dorado, the competition in Ecuador, and then Cup of Excellence being the national competition, what did you think when you tried the coffee for the first time? What was your reaction to it?
Well, actually, I always loved coffee. And I didn't know that much about specialty coffee. But I have to be honest, now I only drink geisha. So I know more now. So I drink the El Dorado, Elisa, and La Noria Farm geisha every morning. And I go to bed at night looking forward to waking up to my cup of coffee in the morning. I didn't know. I thought, whoa, this is pretty incredible coffee. I didn't know the differences in coffee, but now, I'm not a cupper. I want to spend more, put more emphasis in continuing to grow a really good coffee and leave the cupping up to somebody more neutral that may not be, that may not, I always test it. And, and all I can say is it's all I drink now. And, I'm pretty impressed that we were able to grow that good of coffee. But when you look at the farms that we have and the conditions that we have that Ecuador has given us, and the workers that we have on the farms, it's we can grow really good coffee. I think we can compete with anybody.
You spoke a little bit about the real estate, water, making sure that it gets plenty of gets plenty of sun, 12 hours a day, and soil nutrition, obviously the seeds. But between La Noria, so your farms, La Noria, El Dorado, and Elisa, what are the differences between these, or was it the same formula that you were looking for each one?
Well, the Elisa farm has a lot of flat areas and has the lake on it, but it has less growing area. We can maybe get 70,000 plants on the Elisa farm. The El Dorado farm, we can do about 200 to 250,000 plants, and it has also some flat areas, and it's in the same valley as the Elisa farm, and we use the same lake for irrigation. It's a lake created by a big spring, so we use the lake water from the spring on the El Dorado farm also. But the El Dorado farm is also, we grow SL28 in the forest. It has a forest, and then it has some areas that are flat. And on that farm, we go from 1,850 meters down to 1,700 meters. And then the Elisa farm, we go from like 1,750 to 1,650. And then the La Noria farm is about an hour away from the El Dorado and Elisa farm. And the El Dorado and Elisa farm is probably where we're going to do all our processing. That's where we're building the processing building now, and the depulping area and washing area, etc. We're already doing all that, but we're building something nice and modern. And so the La Noria farm is about an hour away, and it gets air from Catamayo. So there's a valley that the warm air from Catamayo can work its way up to the farm. So at 2,000 meters to we're going to plant something at 2,300 meters, and we think we're going to plant the geisha. And we think it's going to grow pretty well because the conditions are good. It gets a little cool, but the air from the Catamayo Valley, which is the Loja airport area, makes its way up into the farm. And on that farm right now, we have 90,000 plants, and we're going to plant another 30 this year. And that plant, it starts at 2,000 meters and goes to 2,300 meters for plants. And there we have 4 varieties.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned that your favorite variety is geisha on this. And, I know that we have 3 geisha lots from you for this Dubai coffee auction. What is it about Ecuadorian geisha that makes it so unique and special? What is versus your SL28 or any other variety that you might have on your farm?
Well, to be honest, I can't compare it to other countries' geishas. All I can say is that the conditions here in Ecuador are. I've been to Panama, and they have great soil and their conditions there. I think they get a pretty heavy rainy season, and they get a pretty intense dry season. So their plants probably get pretty stressed in the dry season and then flourish in the rainy season, can put out a good fruit. That would be my guess. Uh, but Ecuador, just the conditions are, and the shade trees. There's a certain shade tree here called a Finca, and it's full of thorns, but most people take them out. Uh, but you should leave them in if you're growing coffee. You need depending on the elevation, you want a certain amount of sunlight. If you're higher elevation, you have a little less shade, a little more sunlight. But you have to be careful because the higher elevation could burn the coffee leaves. A lower elevation, you want a little more shade. Not a big difference. It can go 40-60 to 60-40, something like that, or 70-30 even on the higher elevations. But Ecuador just has the conditions. The high elevations, it just has the conditions where I think it could probably grow the best coffee on the planet, unless there's other places with similar conditions. It's just
so geisha obviously a special variety, but it's also notoriously difficult to manage and grow. Sounds like Ecuador's given you a leg up in that. It's been a lot easier for you guys than it might have been in other countries, right?
It's our best growing coffee.
Wow.
We plant the geisha. We don't worry about it. The Cedra, we have Cedra on the Elisa farm, a little lower. We're planting about another 15,000 plants on the Dorado farm at the lower elevations. Lower elevation, 1,700 meters. But the Cedra has been trickier. The Typica's been trickier. The SL 28's been trickier. We have a Bourbon that's a hybrid Bourbon with yellow geisha. We call it yellow geisha. It's a hybrid Bourbon geisha that came from a farm in a geisha farm. It actually came from a geisha farm, the seeds in Colombia. So, but anyways, that probably was the easiest. We have Whoosh Whoosh, which was a little tricky, but the geisha that we grow on the higher elevations, it grows better than any of the others. We don't worry about it.
And then in terms of yield and production, is it stand up to the others as well, or is it lower yielding but more, I guess, a more fortified plant?
It's lower yielding. The SL28 is also low yield. Probably the geisha is the lowest yield, and then the SL28. But on the Noria farm, we have our award-winning lot. We get good yield. Pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's so different than the story you hear from other people, right? Other farmers around the world, other producers, is that if geisha is done right, the recommendation should never be go grow geisha. But it sounds like in your instance, the recommendation should be go grow geisha in Ecuador. If you have the right conditions for it, the altitude, as it just naturally does really well. I mean, I don't want to diminish the effort you guys have put in, but you sound very lucky.
No, yeah. I mean, I use that word a lot based on what I know about the coffee industry. We've been lucky. We do have some areas on the Noria farm that have quite a bit of exposure to wind and cold, and the geisha doesn't grow so good there. But where the exposure to the wind and cold is less because it has protection from trees, we have some lots that are just incredible. Just incredible I mean, I go there and I look at it and I say, whoa. But it's not all the lots. The lots on the higher elevation in some areas where they have protection. Well, one lot is 2,000 meters to 2,150. We probably have to break that up into more micro lots as the plants get bigger, because there's a difference between the coffee as you go up in elevation and conditions. But from 2,150 and up, we have the coffee is really, really good, but the plants grow much slower. It's almost like a cutoff line at 2,150.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, that is really high. And so moving up, I mean, maybe at some point that will work, but that's really interesting to hear. So we've talked about this a little bit before, and I know you're passionate about Ecuador and Ecuadorian coffee and the education and promotion around that. Not just your farms, which everybody's passionate about promoting their own product, right? but the
Sure.
country itself. Amazing natural beauty, but also amazing natural resources and ability to produce great coffees, potentially, as you said, the best in the world. What has been the hurdle in getting Ecuadorian coffee on the map? Why the challenge in education and promotion of Ecuador?
Ecuador's just not well known around the world. I mean, everybody's heard of the equator, obviously, but most people don't relate that there's a country called Ecuador on the equator. It's just not that well known. But it's unbelievable. You have a coastal region where it's almost a little bit of a different culture, the costeños. And then you have the Andes, the high elevations, and that's where the best coffee, I think, grows. There's good Robusto on the lower elevations. As you move down, you still get specialty coffees, but as you go lower, it gets more into the Robustos. So you have the coast is like one world, the Andes, the high elevations is like another world, and then you have the whole jungle. There's from where I'm at right now, you could go 700 kilometers up towards the jungle, and there's tribes of people that have never had contact with the outside world. So like 700-800 kilometers away.
Wow.
From where I'm at in the jungle. It's unbelievable. Ecuador has got, some have said the most, but I don't know if it's the most. There's places like Madagascar and places like that. But the variety of birds, exotic birds, the variety of medicinal plants, it's pretty incredible. The country is just so versatile.
So
It's unbelievable.
And so when you're talking to coffee buyers about Ecuador, right, and you're sending samples, what do you find you have to convince them of with Ecuador? Because they can taste the coffee in the cup, they know it's great, but are you competing with other countries? Is that the problem? Are you competing against yourself and your own narrative with Ecuador? What are you trying to overcome in those conversations, or what has to be overcome in those conversations that maybe a Colombian or a Panamanian or a Guatemalan might not have to?
Well, one of the problems is labor costs in Ecuador are a little bit higher than other coffee producing countries, except maybe the U.S. The U.S. would have higher labor costs, so you have to pay a little bit more, so you have to charge a little bit more, and then costs of getting the coffee from Ecuador is a little more expensive. There's no doubt about it, and the quantities are typically less. We're going to have quite a bit just because we have good farms with a lot of area that we can plant, and then so it's basically you have to it costs a little bit more. Ecuadorian coffee, but that's for the reasons I had mentioned. And then really there's really not much convincing. It's all in the cupping.
Yeah.
The issue is to have people get interested in Ecuador. Once we send them the samples, most of the time they're interested, but if they look at the prices, then they may become disinterested. It depends. The specialty coffee market is is not that huge, and all of our coffees are specialty coffees. But Ecuador can produce really good coffee if enough people are interested in cupping it. So So we're going to start a newsletter and uh, try to get Ecuador more on the map. And I think as
Yeah.
people cup the coffees from Ecuador, I think they'll become more interested in it. It's
Yeah.
more. We just need more visibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, more people to taste it, it sounds like, but it's also a niche of a niche, right? Specialty coffee is such a broad term, right? You know,
Right.
you can have coffees that you're blending as a coffee buyer, but for Ecuador, it sounds like at the price point, I mean, we're really talking about sort of a premium luxury product that needs a special place in an offering, which that brings us a little bit to auctions, right? Your interest in that. So competition auctions. So what y- why um why did you decide to compete in competitions? And then I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience with auctions so far and what you're thinking for the future.
Well, we decided to compete because we wanted to know how good our coffee was. I mean,
Yeah.
first our first harvest, we put it out to some national cuppers, and the results came back pretty good.
Yeah.
So we decided to compete in the Taza Dorada and the Cup of Excellence, and we did pretty good for the beginning. And then
I'd say
and
you
then
did great. If you made it to the auction stage, you did incredible,
yeah,
right?
yeah, we had two coffees in the auctions every year that we entered. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, the fact that I mean, even placing in those and getting to the auction stage as a first time participant is remarkable, right? I mean, you're competing against a lot of different producers and a lot of different coffees. So, um,
yeah.
incredible that you were able to do that the first year.
Well, yeah, yeah. I think we took third and 13th in the first year. El Dorado was 13th, and Noria was third. Second year we did second and fourth, and then the third year we got first, first, seventh, and 10th, or first, eighth, and 10th.
How many
And
do
then,
you know offhand how many lots were entered roundabout for those competitions?
well, we entered
Total.
three. The last time around, we entered three, and then
And
Taza Dorado.
total, the entire country. Do you know?
Oh, actually, maybe about 100 go in the beginning,
Yeah.
and then they go down to 40, and then they go down to 20.
Yeah.
So it could be about 100, and then they do the national cupping, goes down to 40, and then they do the national cupping again. I think it goes down to 20, and then the international cupping, and
Yeah.
then you
So
have the
so in your
top
first
10
year,
winners.
you were third out of 100 coffees for one
Yeah,
of your
more or
lots,
less. Yeah.
which is I mean, and that's the best coffee in Ecuador, obviously, to refine down to that level, which is just hard to believe.
Well, it's
And
one of the best. There's some really good coffee here in Ecuador. I know a few other farmers that they have really, really good coffee. It's just that they're just not as visible.
yeah. Oh, and yeah. Well, and this is part of your, you know, what you've taken on as your mission, right? Is not just increasing the visibility for you, but increasing the visibility of Ecuadorian coffee. So, what's kind of as you look out, you know, 5, 10 years, what would you like to see happen with Ecuador? And how do we get there?
What did you say? How do we get here?
Yeah, how do we get there? So, what would you like to see in the next
Ah,
5 to 10 years? And then, how do we get there?
well, we just have to increase visibility, uh, and keep growing good coffee. And thanks to guys like you, uh, giving us the opportunity to talk about Ecuador. I have a daughter that was born here in Ecuador, and she didn't know one profane word until she was like 12 or 13. And I grew up in the U.S. and I knew everything at 6. So,
Yeah,
so Ecuador is very Catholic and very moral, but it's not stringent Catholic. I mean, the people are open-minded. Uh, so basically, what I would like to see is my daughter and her two half sisters managing the company with some of my nephews in the next 5 to 10 years, or growing into that, and me leaving something really, really good for them to manage and work on as I retire and go more into meditation and continue the sweat lodges. That's really what I would like to see. And I'd like to see Ecuador get the name that it deserves. The coffee here and the agriculture here is pretty incredible. The potential of Ecuador is just out of this world. It's like I say, the conditions of this country for growing are incredible. One of the problems is everything you plant here grows here. So the Ecuadorians, they throw the seeds and go back to the hammock and take a look from time to time to see if it's growing. If you're born in a colder climate, you need to pay attention to those seeds and make sure that you have food for the winter. They don't really worry about that here. They have a rainy season and a semi-dry season. Even the semi-dry season, you get some rains here and there. A lot of the farms don't have irrigation. We're very lucky we could afford irrigation, but a lot of them don't need it. And they grow really good coffee. So I would like to see Ecuador be known as a country that produces really good coffee and can compete with the best coffees in the world. And I really think Ecuador can have, if not the best, one of the best in the top 5. It just has the potential.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think you see those trends happening. I know that the competitions and the auctions have been different experience in other countries and how they've come up, right? But I would be, as we're sort of nearing the end of this, I would love to hear kind of what your experience, not with the competition component, but specifically the auction component, and how that sort of plays into this overall strategy for you to increase visibility of Ecuadorian coffee. Does that play a role?
Well, yeah, I think in the I don't know that much about that, but I know that other countries, the auctions are really important. And Ecuador has not had a specialty auction. They've had the Taza Dorado and they've had the Cup of Excellence. And now some countries are moving into specialty auctions like what M-Cultivo does. But you guys also put on Cup of Excellence, and you guys pretty much do it all. I think for the person that buys a cup of coffee at the coffee shop, if they're getting they're buying a cup of coffee that won in an auction, I think that's a big deal. And also the auctions, they tell you which coffees are the best, because it's cupped by professionals that really know what they're doing, because they have to, or they're not going to be asked to do the cupping, and they've done it a lot. I mean, of course, there's going to be some subjectivity, but really, it's not that the variations aren't that great between different cupping scores, from what I've seen when it's at the high professional level, like in some of the Cup of Excellence and some of the other auctions that I've heard about, like in other countries. So I think people are interested in buying auction coffee and then moving on and buying from the producers that have done well in the auctions. It pulls them along. So I think the auctions are extremely important.
Yeah, it's just a good good opportunity for sourcing from a buyer's perspective, sourcing discovery mechanism, right? Takes a
Yeah,
long time to figure out
right.
who the best producers in the world. And, these competitions, these auctions can help develop inroads. And then more importantly for the producer, right, you do get a lead list, hopefully on the backs of that, and some strong long-term relationships,
Well,
which I know you hope to see for Ecuador.
a few of our clients, we only got them through the auction.
Really?
They bought our coffee in the auction, and then they've been buying our coffee ever since. So the auction opened the door, uh, because they knew it was a good coffee because
Yeah.
it was cupped in the auction.
Let me ask you a quick question about that, because that doesn't happen for everyone, right? Did you reach out to them to thank them for buying your auction lot? Did they reach out to you to start sourcing coffee? How did you
Oh, they
develop those
reached out.
relationships?
They reached out to us,
Oh, okay.
uh, and then
Even
a
better.
couple actually came and visited the country, and we ran into them and showed them the farms. We're always happy to show the farms.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would love to see the farms one day. Bernie, we could keep going. I really appreciate your time today. Appreciate you
Yeah,
sharing your
my pleasure.
experience. And I know, based on kind of our conversation, it's like a lot of this was opportunistic. I love hearing about the importance of just starting to work on something. And then, as you said, doors open and doors close. And your meandering path into specialty coffee and what you've been able to achieve is absolutely remarkable. I know you started with a great foundation. Ecuador has, it sounds like some of the best land, some of the best altitudes, some of the best soil, sunlight, has everything going for it. But it still takes a guy like you, Bernie, to sort of wrangle all the resources and everything and actually take that bold step of planting coffee. And so I just want to tell you that I appreciate that you took that step, and that we're able to have these conversations and have a relationship, and talk about some great coffee.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. I appreciate you guys. We need to put Ecuador on the map. It deserves it.
Yeah,
The
we will
world
do
deserves.
it. Well,
The
as
world
I said,
deserves Ecuadorian coffee.
say what?
I said the world deserves Ecuadorian coffee.
I think more people need to try it, and they'll have an opportunity to try it with Finca Noria and El Dorado in this Dubai coffee auction. We're excited to showcase this coffee amongst others, and I know a lot of people will be trying Ecuadorian coffee, some for the first time. So really appreciate you partnering with us on this, Bernie, and we will talk to you soon.
Okay, David. Thank you so much.